Gina. Gina Larrisey, the author of Chasing Rainbows. You're a parent with a child with autism. Is it easy being the parent of a child with autism?
Is it easy being a parent of any child? Child with autism, you've got added extras. It's very hard. Every day's a new challenge. You just don't, with any child, you don't know what's coming next. Autism, there's a lot of complex needs.
Is there any one particular type of autistic child, or is the spectrum so wide that really every case, every child is different?
There is a saying that goes, when you've met one child with autism, you've met one child with autism. Every single child is different. The autistic spectrum is a wide spectrum, and it covers children from high-end autism where they're severely disabled and not really functioning that well, and then the other end, which would be the class as Asperger's. They don't solely diagnose Asperger's, but that level is high functioning autism. So yeah, it's a very, very broad spectrum.
Okay. Gina, without going into too many personal details, what sort of challenges does a parent with a child with autism face?
The child himself, herself, it's a social and communication disorder. So the challenges for them are just being in a room full of people or being in a noisy place, dealing with unusual smells. Their day-to-day life has to be very sort of strict to them, routine. They need to know what's happening, when it's happening. Things like to be in an order. If something's different, that causes major problems. They don't know why it's different. They don't like loud noise, unusual smells. There's a lot of sensory issues. My son's sensory processing disorder as well. And it's all about how the neurons in the brain pass the messages. There's a delay. So there can be either hypersensitive or hyposensitive. Messages might reach the brain a lot more slowly than a normal person. So they could maybe fall over and hurt their knee but not feel any pain straight away. It's how those signals reach the brain. Or they might have the tiniest of little cuts and it feels like they've been stabbed, and they'd be screaming in absolute agony, and that pain is real for them. That's just one little thing.
Is it perhaps feasible that perhaps maybe what they feel in the middle of perhaps maybe one of these mini crises is the fact that suddenly they don't feel in control because something unpredictable, something unusual has happened that they weren't expecting, perhaps?
Yeah, I've found with my son a lot of it is about control and feeling the need to be in control. He does like to control a lot of the situations. He just needs to feel safe. A lot of it is about him constantly feeling in danger or something's going to happen to him. If he's in an unfamiliar place, for an example, we've been to Greece on holiday, and when we were in Greece, he doesn't speak to English people, but there were all these Greek people. He couldn't understand the language, he didn't know where he was, it was blazing hot, so he was sweating and didn't understand, it was an overstimulation, and he had a massive big meltdown in the middle of a Greek town, and just all that unfamiliarity. They just need a really good routine and they like to stick to the same thing. Obviously life isn't like that. Sometimes the unknown is going to happen. You might have an appointment or your car breaks down or something that you're just not expecting, and you always have to be prepared for that. Always have a backup plan. That's something I always say as well, have a backup plan. Yeah, it's not a problem, it's a one-off incident, but when you have, say, several incidents like that, and it affects their everyday life, it affects them learning, it affects them functioning, affects them making friends and being social and accepted in society, that's when it's a diagnosis of autism.
He would hit himself and claw at his face. He would hide under tables or chairs and barricade himself in. I was heartbroken. And as he was slowly being demoralised and his confidence destroyed, so was mine. I felt like I was going mad. and a depression descended on me that had stayed away for 6 years. I shut the curtains that afternoon and shut the world out with it. I was at wit's end and hid myself away. He constantly repeated to me, the same thing will happen, the same thing will happen. It broke my heart to hear him then say, there's something wrong with me. I am trouble.
Gina, when your child was first diagnosed with autism, did you feel at first completely on your own? Were you aware of anybody else, any other parents in a similar position to you? Or were you at first just on your own?
If you've got a child where the autism has only just come to light, you might not have a clue, about what autism is. For me, myself, when I was told my son was autistic, I was, what are you talking about? Because I'd gone to the doctors over a completely different issue. When I was relaying this other issue, she'd said to me, do you think he's autistic? And I was like, no, what are you talking about? Because I had no idea what autism was.
Really?
No, so when you look into it, and then I was, oh yeah, and it all started piecing together for me. There's a lot of quirky behaviour, they're very different. They might not like the same thing other children do. My son, for instance, would stand in front of a waterfall for an hour, whereas other children like football and playing games and things like that. And he's very much likes to be on his own. He's quite isolated. As a parent, that can be worrying. You could be thinking, oh, he's not making any friends and he's on his own all the time. And I went through a stage of really worrying about him not being involved with birthday parties. Birthday parties are a big issue, still are. Joining in clubs and things like that, he finds that really, really difficult. And I got to a stage where I was doing all the worrying, thinking he wasn't being able to access these things and be a normal child. And then eventually I realised that what he's doing is normal for him. Why do I feel he needs to go to a club or a birthday party if that's not what he wants? So it's about tailoring your lifestyle to your child. And this is another thing that I say as well, is you can't expect the child to come into your world. You have to go into their world. It's very much their little world. It's traumatic, to be fair. I ended up with depression myself, so was my husband. Just that coping on a day-to-day level is really hard, just getting through each day.
Do you feel at times that life is just carrying on and passing by?
Yeah. Sometimes it's like you have to put your life on hold. I had to give up full-time work and go back to part-time work. At the moment, things like I can't go out the door because my son's diagnosed with anxiety as well, which goes hand in hand with autism. Me going anywhere, he struggles with because he thinks I'm going to die. I'm very much a big part of his life, and his life is very insular, where it's his little world. As I said earlier, it's about you getting into their world as well, not about trying to get them to come to your world.
You also happen to be a Christian. Do you find being a Christian and the parent of a child with autism easy? Is it all just plain sailing? Or is it somewhat different?
Having children is never plain sailing. Being a Christian probably makes it harder because you're trying to do the right thing constantly. And I think that's a personal battle with me anyway, is always trying to do the right thing. But trying to access help and support for your child is, and complaints procedures I'll throw in there as well, because I had to go through that process. It's very long and drawn out. Getting support for your child is very long. It's very frustrating, and you do want to scream at people sometimes, and you do have to have a word with yourself because you are a Christian and you're trying to do the right thing. But sometimes it's like banging your head against a brick wall, because your child comes first and you want to do the right thing by your child. But as I say, it's such a long process. It's hard to do the right thing.
Okay. Gina, if there's anything you could say to perhaps maybe a parent now who's just recently had the news that the child has been diagnosed with autism, if there's anything you would say to them by word of encouragement to say, look, you're not alone, what would that be?
I would say that you probably had a bombshell dropped on you. It is tough to take, but you will get over it and you will find support. You'll probably find support where you least expect it. I lost a lot of friends through what happened, but I also gained a lot of friends. You will find support when you eventually get your child in maybe the right school. There are parents groups, there are people, there's Facebook, there's places that you can access.
Gina Larrisey, thank you very much.
Thanks for having me.
Looking back over the past few years, I've been fighting all this time. In fact, I've been fighting my whole life. Fighting to always do the right thing. Fighting to make relationships work or trying to fix the ones that have fell apart. Now, I was fighting for my boy. Fighting for a statement of education. Fighting to be heard. Fighting for the right school. Something had to give. This was when I put things into perspective. No longer could I fight for the relationships that were no good for me or were not working anymore. It's all very well me waving a white flag and trying to mend friendships or family feuds, but it takes two to tango. It was all very well me writing letters to people and thinking if I sent them, I may miraculously fix anything. I couldn't keep chasing these rainbows all by myself anymore, especially when there were more important things to fight for now. Some rainbows are just not meant to be, or they fade after time. Many rainbows are absorbing and time-consuming, and their perfection can detract from what really matters in life. I realised what really mattered in life was my boy and those around me who wanted to be part of our lives. I now had a different circle of friends with whom I connected to, and those people who have supported us. I now had a different perspective. It was time to put aside writing letters to people that I now knew I was never going to send. I realised that there was no pot of gold to be had in carrying on with them. It was time to stop chasing relationships that are one-sided or not to be. The only rainbow I would be chasing from now on would be for my son.